staff, alums, loving parents and grandparents, families, and all the friends who've made this possible today, and above all, the beautiful, vibrant, graduating class of 2011. Congratulations. The graduates, you've come distances great and small, from all over Oregon, Alaska, Colorado, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Utah, Wisconsin, and Brazil. You have struggled to balance family, school, jobs, internships, relationships, as well as all your other commitments. You've also made it through and helped faculty make it through what has been perhaps one of the most difficult years the School of Social Work has faced, including the violent deaths of two of our loved colleagues days before classes began. And on behalf of all of the staff and the faculty, I want to thank all of the students for your patience and for your love and for your support as we navigated this last year. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to take part in your party. And frankly, I'm having a hard time taking myself seriously, as I feel like I look like a purple marshmallow, and I won't hold it against you if you don't either. I celebrate your accomplishments, and I share every tingle of excitement. I'm honored to help welcome you into your next journey. Being chosen by you to speak today is a responsibility that has been humbling and heavy. I have sat in the quiet, struggling to gather up some of my thoughts that keep me awake at night, and the thoughts that give me solace as I rise in the morning, and it's my hope that these words are going to be sufficient for this occasion. As I engage the process of trying to tap into my inner well of hope, as I was asked to speak about hope and sustaining communities, I asked myself, where do I feel hopeless in my life? And where do I feel silent, and where have I felt silenced? One of the places where I've become intimate friends with fear and hopelessness, and maybe not intimate friends, but close acquaintances, is in my experience of being a mother. While this is a place where I draw much strength in my life, it's also a place where I experience a lot of vulnerability. And I'm challenged frequently, and I wouldn't say challenged necessarily by my delicious, strong-willed 3- and 5-year-olds, although they do challenge me on occasion, but I mean challenged by the sheer responsibility and honor of being their parent. Specifically, the experiencing and knowing that I will not be able to be there to protect my children every moment of their lives brings me and lends me to feelings of hopelessness on occasion, and also brings me to my knees. About 6 weeks ago, my 5-year-old son had an accident that nearly took his life. After the incident, I was an absolute wreck. I could not eat, I could not sleep, and I could not stop the video footage in my head of what happened. I could no longer imagine how I was ever going to be able to allow my children to be out of my sight ever again. I was faced with such an overwhelming sense of powerlessness and hopelessness to protect my children at all times. And I knew, as I've known always, that no matter how attentive I am as a mother, as a parent, there will be times in life where things happen. And I suspect that all of you parents out there know exactly what I'm talking about. Given the trauma and the fear I experienced after this incident, I knew that I needed to get help in order to pull myself together for my family and for my son. And I knew that I had to find a way to connect with that deepest part of myself, the part that is not the ordinary Stephanie that would worry and fret and focus on the what ifs. What if I hadn't been there? What if he had died? What if? I had to find a way to that mysterious place within myself where hope lives. Silence. An act that I've often viewed as the enemy or the tool of the enemy became my friend and my companion to that deep place where hope and transformation rests. Václav Havel was once asked if he had any hope for the Republic of Czechoslovakia in the 1980s, and he responded, "Hope is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart." Those words help me to recognize that I can, in fact, find an internal source that can hold its own when I've overcome with fear and hopelessness. I've also been visited by hopelessness in my work as a social worker. Anybody can relate out there? Maybe? I had a very interesting dialogue about social justice over a course of a few weeks last summer with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Nakona Piwiwardi. And while eating apple slices and drinking coffee and talking about a paper over her kitchen table, she asked me, as only Dr. Piwiwardi could, "So Stephanie, is social justice even possible? And if it's not, why are we teaching it to students?" I was speechless. As someone who's created most of her academic and social work practice career within the context of social justice, this question was deeply unsettling and somewhat difficult for me to answer. I paused, I took a breath, I tried to answer again, didn't have any words, and I'm not often at a loss for words. And I found myself even resisting the question altogether. I also found myself engaging the question from this very visceral place, and that's first and foremost from my identity as a Palestinian, and specifically the daughter of a Palestinian refugee. And so hope for liberation from occupation for the Palestinians has been a constant in my life. Hope for survival, hope for peace, hope for justice. Back to Nakona's question, is social justice possible for all, and if it's not, why are we teaching it to students? So I believe that in her documentary, Beyond Pink and Blue, Leslie Feinberg articulates where Dr. Piwiwardi was coming from. And in the film, she says, "A victory for one is a victory for all, and an injustice for one is an injustice for all. So for as long as injustice persists in any place, how can we have justice?" If I am honest with myself, I find it difficult to imagine a day, particularly in my lifetime, where all people everywhere will be liberated from oppression and occupation, will have justice, health, fair and equal access to needed resources for survival, for self and collective actualization, when all are physically safe and psychologically safe and secure, when all individuals are self-determining and interdependent, and when folks are social actors with a sense of their own agency. However, even in the face of this reality check, I'm still hopeful that this seemingly utopian vision is possible. Maybe unlikely, but possible. And ultimately, I see social work as a spiritual profession. For social workers are those who do not turn their faces away from suffering, nor do they shrink away in complicity. We do not give up on what is possible because it seems unlikely. Social workers see suffering and move towards it, face it with open hearts, meet it with our hands and our minds, our well-intentioned selves. And as my dear friend Scott Wynn has said, to be a social worker is an act of love, an engagement with profound realities, some unthinkable until witnessed. It is this witnessing when oppressive silences end, and as social workers we have a lot to witness. Communities struggling, resisting, surviving. So how might we find hope when we do feel hopeless in the face of all the suffering and the injustice that we both perpetuate and strive to end? And so I ask you, take a moment and ask you, where are you silent in your life for fear of punishment or marginalization? What can't you speak of to your family? Where do you have viewpoints or identities that might lead you to be discriminated against or oppressed? This is the stillness that I'm encouraging you to find. In our breath, there's a moment between inhale and exhale that is motionless. No air is being drawn in, no air is being expelled. As long as we live, we still have this moment of stillness within us. And it will be a constant source of comfort if we allow it. When I feel this moment, this stillness, this silence within, there is joy that enters. This is where vision comes from, and I don't mean the visions that our eyes allow, I mean the vision that our hearts provide. It is this place of sitting where we can imagine a home for us all, and we must imagine it. So often we fear silence because when we are still and attempt to be quiet, it is then that we might come face to face with boredom. And when we are bored, our fears enter, and we feel, and have become a nation that fears feeling, that avoids it, that medicates it, that flees from it. And it is often not only our oppressions that keep us from silence, but our privileges as well. Today marks an important day for all of you and your family and your friends. And as you cross this stage in a few minutes, You'll be entering a new place, a new position of privilege that you don't have right this moment. With this piece of paper you'll be handed, many doors will be open to you, and as doors open to you, they will be closing for others. And perhaps someone with more experience and skills than you may be able to excel at a job that you're applying for, but may be turned away because they don't have the privilege of the piece of paper. And with the privilege of this paper and other privileges you may have due to race, class, gender, religion, sexual orientation, nationality, this is a place where the demands to not be silent enter. Tim Wise, an anti-racist thinker and writer, reminds us about speaking about white folks, that the one privilege we can actually give up is our silence. Lending our voice in the face of injustice and lending our voice towards the creation of justice, and speaking up, whether through word or deed, is scary. But being silenced is different than being silent. And as we reclaim the silencing from oppression and transform it towards a silence as a site of liberation, consider silence as a vehicle for self-care and consequently preparation for strategic action. To engage in the formidable and necessary task of transforming the silence into a sacred site of liberation, of freedom, of vastness and expansion, a site where suffering is met and known and befriended, and a site where silence ends and movement begins. As silence ends, perhaps pen meets petition, mouth meets microphone, action meets arms, desire meets dialogue, and fear meets courage. It is through silence where we can communicate with our hearts so that we can entertain the collective wisdoms of humanity. And I'd like to end with just a few words from one of my favorite Palestinian-American poets, Suhair Hamid. And I need to sit still, concentrate to hear the blood below my feet, the spirits in the wind on me. A firm life, we got to carry each other now. You are either with life or against it, a firm life. Thank you.